So, you've already turned off your pages and cell phones and all the electronic gear, haven't you? If not, maybe we could do that. Could we just have the house lights up just slightly? Just so I just see a little bit. Otherwise it's just this glare in front of my eyes. So welcome here, welcome. My name's Ralph Johnson. I'm going to tell you the story of my ancestors. And I greet you this way because I have a certain pride that we live in a bicultural country. Now, it wasn't always like this, of course. For centuries, it was Te Reo Māori was the language and Tikanga Māori was the way. But then in 1840, things changed. Two significant events, the Treaty of Waitangi, and where the British government signed a treaty with 500 of the rangatira of this land. And ship after ship started arriving on these shores containing settlers sent out by the New Zealand Company to create a little Britain in the South Seas. Now I'm going to take you to January 1840, when the first of these ships is about to arrive at the first of these settlements. And on board the ship, the Aurora, is a young seamstress. As a young seamstress, 15-year-old Jemima Oxenham. Oh, I'm so excited. We're nearly at our destination. Oh, it's been 4.5 long months. Oh, it hasn't been all bad. I mean, we've had storms, we lost some spars, but we've had dancing on the deck, and me and my sister Sarah, we've been sewing our wedding dresses. I know. My brother John, he's the one that brought us out here. You see, our mother and father died in a gig accident back in 38. They were driving in the country and the wheels slipped over into the ditch and the gig overturned and they were crushed. Me and my sister Sarah were put into a convent. But then, last year, John came to us and he said, would you like to join me in this adventure out to New Zealand? We're going to be one of the first ships that are going out to this new colony they're setting up. Oh, yes! Anything to get away from the nuns. So, here we are. And 3 days ago, we finally found out where we were going. You see, we didn't have a clue. We just was told to rendezvous with the leader of the expedition, Colonel William Wakefield, at a place called Port Hardy, and that's right at the top of Middle Island. You see, there are 3 islands in New Zealand. There's North Island, Middle Island, and Stewart Island. And we were right up the top in a place called Port Hardy on D'Urville Island, which is another island. There's a lot of islands. But we were to meet Colonel Wakefield there. But when we sailed in, there was no sign of him. We waited and waited and nothing happened. But then, someone said, there's a canoe coming from the shore, and it's full of natives. And we were worried, because we'd heard all sorts of things about these natives of New Zealand, these New Zealanders. They were fierce warriors. They had tattoos all over their faces, and they ate people. And they were coming to our ship. But someone said, it's all right, they're waving a letter. So we all rushed to the side of the ship to look down at these first sight of these New Zealanders. And, oh! They were naked. Oh, I didn't know where to look. But they gave us instructions where to go. Our new colony was going to be in a place called Port Nicholson, right down the bottom of the North Island. So, 3 days later, we were outside the port, but we couldn't get in because there was this big wind blowing. There's so much wind there, they say. And we couldn't get in for several days. But finally, on the 22nd of January, 1840, we arrived. But there's nothing here. Just tree-clad hills, a beach, swamps, a bird in the bush. I can hear birds. And villages with smoke rising. Where's the town that we were promised? Where's Britannia? Oh, I was so silly those days ago. It's March now and the weather's beautiful. And the Maori, they've been so helpful. 2 or 3 of them attached themselves to each household. And my brother has set up a business on the shores of the Hutt River as a shipwright. He's going to build boats there. And me and my sister, we have been helping build the houses with the help of some of the natives. They've come, they bring us food, potatoes, they bring us firewood, they help us build the houses out of a tree called manuka and a rush called ropo and a creeper called kariao. And so we've built our house. Oh, it's so exciting. And all that worry about the nakedness. Oh, you get used to it after a while. One day, me and my sister Sarah, we were walking along the beach at Petone. That's the name of the beach where we landed. And our settlement is just a little bit inland from that, and we've called it Britannia. Yes, and houses are going up. We've had one flood, but that's not going to deter us. No. But I was telling you about this day. We were walking along the beach, and we saw this old Maori man, and he was trying to push his canoe, waka, into the water. And so my sister and I looked at each other, and we went, shall we? Yes, why not? Okay. So we went and we helped him. And we pushed the canoe into the water. And when it was floating, we found that it was a brand new canoe, waka. And we'd got all this red stuff all over our hands. We were wondering what to wipe it on. And this gentleman, this old man, took off his only garment and handed it to us to wipe our hands on. Ko. He pai tera?
E pai te rā mō te ika.
Ika. Oh, kia maha te ika. Ika. And here we were, chatting in a foreign language on this foreign beach at the other side of the world with the sun shining down on us, talking to a naked man as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Which I suppose it is. Later, my sister and I laughed when we thought, what would the nuns back home have thought? Oh, we've had a terrible time. Oh, we've had 2 more floods. Just as we get everything dried out, there's another flood. This place is impossible. Some of the Cornish people, they built their houses on a high ridge just a bit further to the south. But then the great fire came along the other night and burned it all down, and we had to take them into our houses. But the same night, this very same night, we were in the houses with our new guests, trying to settle down again for the night, and suddenly the whole building started to shake. We ran outside thinking someone's trying to push our house down, but no! It was the ground that was shaking. And all the Maori, the natives, they just laughed at us and they said, oh, Romoko. Happens all the time, apparently. Oh, what have we come to? But that's not the worst. The worst is I have to get married to George Coughlin. George Coughlin's the name, to be sure. Oh, I came over here when I heard there was going to be a settlement here. I was from Sydney. working for Mr. Rhodes, the importer and exporter, and he set up a business here. You see the big building down the beach there? The Waterloo Stores, and I'm the agent. Money, money, money. And you see the little shack next to it? That's my grog shop. Money, money, money. Well, and not the highfalutin clientele that you could get. Whalers, seamen, rowdy lot, but they pay. Mind you, got a few complaints. Well, Colonel William Wakefield himself came in, tried to tell me to shut the noise down. I told him, I laughed in his face. I said, well, you've got no power around here. You're not the authority. Who are you to tell me? You know, the nearest authority's over in Sydney. Anyway, he went away with a flea in his ear. But he was back, and I was laughing on the other side of my face. He brought Tipuni, Warapuri, Witato, and a few of the other high-ranking rangatira from around these parts. Well, they're their authority. And I said, shut it, mate, or you're on the next boat back to Sydney. Oh, well, what can you do? What can you do? But, oh, it's not bad. I'm going to get married. A nice little filly. You're 16 years old. Oh, I can't wait till the wedding night. Her brother, you see, has promised me a boat. If I buy a boat, he'll give me his daughter. So it's a deal. Oh, that wedding. Oh, I can't wait. Oh, the wedding night was horrible. It was worse than anything I could have imagined. It was a drunken brawl. Oh, it was horrible. My husband's the worst of the lot. Oh! And the police and the soldiers had to come and break it up. One of the constables was very nice to me. He asked me if I was all right. He was the only one that did. Richard Burgess Sayer. Why couldn't my brother have married me to him?
Chief Constable Richard Burgess Sayer now. December 1841. I came over on the Oriental in January 1840. I've been here nearly 2 years. And look at me. I was going to be a bricklayer. Now I'm Chief Constable. A bit more interesting than building houses and walls and things like that. And being a constable's not too bad. Can be quite boring at times, but then you've got all the brawls that you've got to break up, and there's fires, and there's the drownings. Oh, that's where I'm going now. I'm rowing, oh, by the way, the town's shifted up to Lambton Harbour, and we're calling the new settlement Wellington, after the Duke of Wellington, the victor of Waterloo. Yes, well, that's where the police station is now. So I've got to row all the way up to Petone to deliver the message to his drowned man's widow. The fellow's name is Coghlan, and he owns a hotel there called the Australian. A big fancy place, I hear. 2 stories, chandelier. He's come up in the world, that fella. Well, he did before he went down in the world. You know what I mean. Says this is a bit of the job that I don't like so much. It's not the rowing, I mean. It's the telling someone that their husband's dead. Oh, here we go. Right. Right, the Australian. Well, there it is. Big place, look at that. Whew, he's done all right, hasn't he? Oh, to get it over and done with. Yes? Mrs. Coghlan? Chief Constable Burgess Sayer at your service. Look, I've got some bad news to impart to you. Your husband's drowned. Drowned? Dead? Yes, ma'am. she went back upstairs. Oh, poor thing. Grief-stricken, I'd say. Oh, dear. I closed the door gently behind me. Made my way back to my boat. She was so pretty, too. A little thing like that, left alone with her grief. Chandelier shaking. Oh, she's doing herself a mischief. I was in there like a flash, up the stairs, burst into the room, and there she was. Dancing. He's dead! He's dead! He's dead! He's dead! He's dead! Constable. Mrs. Cochran. Whoa! 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 Hey! Hey! Whoa! Whoa! Well, I didn't mind. But things went from bad to worse. You see, shortly after that, there was a glue fire further down the beach, and it swept right along all the houses along the beach there, and the Australian was burnt to the ground. And then Mrs. Coghlan was transporting some of her goods that had been saved over to Lambton Harbour, and the boat that had the goods in upturned, and she lost half her goods. But not everything was bad. I married my constable. He proposed to me. I'm bearing this child. If it's a boy, we're going to call it Richard, after his father. But I do worry about the work that he does. It's so dangerous. Oh, dangerous. Poof. I mean, there's a few attempts at my life. I've tried to board a ship to get hold of an embezzler who was trying to escape, and I was threatened with guns and thrown overboard, but yeah, it happens. But it can be exciting, and it's much better than being a bricklayer, I'll tell you that. I mean, there was this time, not so long ago, March 1843, 6 prisoners escaped from the Wellington jail, and they made their escape. Well, the chief magistrate, McDonough, he was running around like a flea that couldn't find a dog. It was funny. But Tapuni, down at Betone, he sent out some of his Atiawa, and within a few days, they brought back 4 of the escapees. And then the 5th one came in, and we were so pleased that the chief magistrate gave them all a £5 reward. We still had the ringleader at large, a fella called Bill, huge, burly fella. Yeah, well, we soon heard that he was up north, a Pororua way, and he'd been disturbing some of the folk up there. But he made a mistake. He disturbed some of the Ngati Toa. Now, Ngati Toa are the dominant tribe around this area, and they've got 2 big leaders, Rangi Hayata and Te Raupraha, and you don't mess with them. Oh no. So, we soon got the message that Rangi Hayata had Bill as his prisoner. So, up I went, up to Pororua, up to Mana, to the Pa there, Rangi Hayata's Pa. And there, I introduced myself to Rangi Hayata and said, I've come for Bill. And he said, he's mine. I said, well, excuse me, but I've come to arrest him and take him back to prison. He escaped. I caught him. He's mine. No, look here. British justice must prevail. No, I shouldn't have said that. That was not the thing to say, because that just made him dig his feet in, his heels in a bit deeper. Because you see, what had happened that Christmas before this is a young Ngati Toa lass over in the Marlborough Sounds in Cloudy Bay had been murdered by a white whaler. Well, we all knew it was Dickie Cook who had done it. But the missionary over there, Mr. Ironside, said, no, British justice must prevail. And because he had high mana, high status, they obeyed him. They said, all right. So he was brought to Wellington for trial. Got off on a technicality. So I couldn't really blame Rangi Hayata for digging his heels in and scorning British justice. But all the same, I had to do my duty. So I was arguing with him backwards and forwards, trying all my persuasive powers, when, round the corner, comes the mailman, a man called Henry Burling. Henry Burling at your service. I'm the mailman round here. I wasn't always a mailman. I came over with my family in May of 42. And, well, I was a silk and satin printer back in England. But not much call for that in the new colony, so I became a gardener. But only for a few months, because then I met this fella, Audrey Hepapa. Now, he was going past with his pigs one day, down to market in Wellington to sell them. Well, and I noticed that his wife wasn't looking too good. And I said to Mary, that's my wife, I said, she doesn't look too good, Justin. She said, no, we should bring her in. So we did. We looked after her for a couple of days, and when she was well again, we took her back to Audrey Hepapa, who lived in a place called Ortari. Now, he was so pleased that he gave us some land. So we were able to set up a small steading there. We bought a couple of cows, and we were able to supply milk. So we started getting a bit of a business going, and then the job as the mailman came up. And mailman in those days, well, you see, my mail run was between Wellington and Wanganui. That was another of the New Zealand company settlements. And there was another one up in New Plymouth. And so what would happen is I'd walk up the coast to Wanganui, I'd come to rivers, take off my clothes, wrap them in a bundle, swim across the river with the mail wrapped up in the clothing, keep it dry. Then I'd get to Wanganui, the fella would come down from, I'd meet the fella from New Plymouth, swap mails that we needed to, and I'd make the return trip. You know, it would take a week one way, a week the other way. So every fortnight I'll be going up there. Well, one day I'm coming back, well, yesterday in fact, and I get as far as Mana here. And Rangi Aiata sees me and he calls out, Audrey Henry! Audrey Henry! That's what they call me, because I'm Audrey Hepapa's man, you see. And he says, how do I? So I go over and he offers me a tot of rum. So people have often said to me, you know, why do you go unarmed in amongst those savages? And I go, oh, they've never done me any harm. Anyway, I've got my weapons. Here's my gun. Here's my ammunition. Pipe, bit of tobacco. Nothing like it for soothing the savage breast. And mine too. Anyway, so we shared some tobacco, shared some rum, and it wasn't long before I was very happy to accept a blanket in a corner of this whare for the night. And in the morning, well, I wasn't in a hurry to get home, so I chatted to some of the locals and caught up on the news, and then I was just coming to find my host to say goodbye, and I was coming round the corner, and what do I see? I see him there talking with the Chief Constable of Wellington, Richard Burgess Sayer. So I sort of wanders over to hear what they're saying to each other, and I can see that Richard Burgess Sayer isn't getting on very far with what he's wanting. Oh, okay. Big bill, eh? Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. So Sayer, have you told him about the £5 reward? Well, that changed things. Rangi Hayata gave me a look like, oh. And Burgess Sayer gave me a look like, what? I mean, was he trying to keep the money for himself, the reward, or was he just trying to save the government a bit of money? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, so when that's it, Rangi Hayata's tune changed, and he says, all right, I'll give them into your charge, Audrey Henry. So I went, oh, okay, fine. And he sent one of his men down with us. So the four of us set off, Richard Burgess Sayer, myself, Burley Bill, and one of Rangi Hayata's men. Well, we got as far as Jackson at the end of the harbour there, and that's where we stayed the night. And I thought, well, what are we going to do with Burley Bill during the night? We'll probably make a run for it. But Richard Burgess Sayer had the answer. Pulled out a set of handcuffs. Latched it on to Burley Bill, grabbed my wrist and latched it on to me, and I said, hey! And he said, well, you're in charge of him. Burley Bill, you're yours. Not the most comfortable night I ever have, I tell you. But I appreciated what Sayer was doing. Anyway, the rest of the day, next day we set off and headed down to Wellington. And Burgessayer and I got chatting and telling each other stories and finding out our history, and by the time we got to Wellington, we were the best of mates. And I went to the jail and handed over Burley Bill and said to Floyd, the jailer, I said, okay, I need that £5 reward to give to Rangi Haita's man. And he said, I'm not giving it to you until I get it from the government. All right. Fished into my pocket, paid him out of my own, paid the Rangi Haita's man out of my own money. And off he went. And Richard Burgessayer said, come home and meet the family. So I did. Jemima, Mrs. Sayer, nice to meet you. oh, this is little Richard, is it? Spitting him into his father. And next thing you know, we're in and out of each other's houses. Best of friends. Well, things go a bit, I finally get that £5 back from the government 3 months later. But by that time, things have turned to custard. You see, on the 17th of June, 1843, there was a fracas over in the South Island. That's what we're calling it nowadays. No longer Middle Island, South Island. Still Stewart Island, still North Island. Middle Island's now South Island. Anyway, there's a fracas over there, a place called Wairo. And between the Nelson settlers and Ngāti Toa. And the Nelson settlers come off worse. In fact, 21 of them get killed. Most of them after they surrendered, which didn't go down too well with the people of Wellington. And soon everyone was on war footing. They kept thinking, let's go take our revenge on Ngāti Toa, Te Rauparaha must pay, and all that sort of stuff. And meanwhile, Ngāti Toa, because I was still doing my mail run, they're going, oh, the Wellington people are going to come up and take their utu, their revenge. Oh, they'll take their payment, and we've got to go and attack them first. And I go, I'm glad I'm not involved in all this, but I did get involved because there was a new governor appointed, a man called Fitzroy, and he looked into the case and he said, those Nelson people were in the wrong. Although it was terrible to kill unarmed prisoners, I am not going to take any further action. Well, Wellington weren't too happy about that. Anyway, I learned about it when I meet Richard Burgessayer with a party of armed men heading up the coast. And I said, hey, where are you going? Don't go armed. They'll kill you. They'll see it as provocation. No, you better go back. No, mate. Look, go back. You'll be killed for sure. Anyway, I persuaded them. So we go back, and we're argy-barging back and forwards. And finally, the governor says, well, who's going to take these letters? We're going to have a letter to Rangi Haita, one for Te Rauparaha, telling that we've got to take no further action and giving him a pardon. And everyone looks at me. What? Me? Oh. Fine, I agree. Okay. Look, but if anything happens to me, you've got to promise to look after my family. Well, I promised, and I set off with the 2 letters. Well, I get to Mana. And I'm coming along and I can see this bell tent right in the middle there. I bet that's from the Wairo too. I'm skirting around some harakeke bushes and suddenly, Otere Henry! You didn't think we saw you, did you? Rangi wants to see you. And I was like, my heart was beating my best. I thought, all right, let's sit on the stump here and have a pipe of tobacco. And next thing, they're taken out of my hand. Next thing, the musket's been cocked, aimed at me, and I go, okay, all right, run down the hill, flat out. And Rangi Haita comes out of his tent, and he burst out laughing. Otere Henry! Haere mai! No mai, haere mai! What brings you to these parts, my friend? Well, I said, I've got some mail to deliver, don't I? Oh, is there anything I can do for you? Well, you give me my pipe back. So I'll get my pipe and my tobacco back. Share a plug with Rangi Haita. We stand there puffing for a bit. And I say, actually, there's a letter for you. Yeah. It's a pardon for the Wairo. I've got one for your uncle too. over her heart, it says, Otaki. Wait here. And he went into his bell tent. And he came out with a kete, full with cooked kumara. And he handed it to me and he said, this will see you safe to Otaki. I thought, oh, good on him. So, tucked it under my arm, you know, Nohora, and off I went. Well, things went pretty well after that. Kia ora! Everyone seemed to be in a good mood up there. I thought, well, this is not so bad. And then I came to the Waikanai River. Now, the Waikanai River is just a bit deeper than the other ones. And I had to take off my trousers and my shoes. Well, I put my boots around my neck, wrapped my trousers around the kete and the letter, and the kumara, of course, and waded across. And I got to the other side, and suddenly, hands are grabbing me. And suddenly I'm surrounded by these young braves, and they're all looking at me, and they frisk me and they pull out my tobacco and start sharing it and plugs out amongst themselves. And this old queer comes over and she's spitting invective at me. She kicks my bundle and out rolls the kete with the kumara. Everything changes. Oh, all those young braves, they're getting all that tobacco and they're trying to put it all back together again. I'm going, what? It's the kete. And I find out later that Waitohi, Rangihaiata's mother, the Rabraha's sister, the chieftainess, Waitohi, made it. And it was her particular design. And it was recognised. And that's what had given me safe passage. I was tapu. Yeah, well, it didn't help me. A couple of years later, and I'm tossed off my land. You see, He Papa sold his land to the New Zealand company. And they didn't give me any compensation, they just said you have to leave. Well, by this time, I'd found myself another occupation. I'd been sick of doing all that mail backwards and forwards. I'm getting a bit old now. I'm well into my 40s. And I find work with a man who's building, Mr. Fitzgerald, who's building a road up through the Hutt Valley and over the Rimatakas. So I've become foreman on his gang. And he likes what I do, so he keeps me on. And he's a bit of trouble during the 45 and 46 with the people in the Hutt Valley who, there's a bit of argy-bargy about who owns the land, and Maori say, no, we didn't sell it, and it was sold against our wishes. There was a very mixed thing. I tried to stay out of it all and try to keep on good terms with everybody, but I just do my job. But over the other side of the other side of the Rimatakas, there's this great plain called a Widarap, or Maori call it Wairarapa, but we call it Widarap. And I thought, right here at the bottom of the bridle path, that's where I'll set up a little accommodation house. So I went to see a couple of the local rangatira, Wikingi, Manahira, settle a bit of an agreement around money and what the lease will be, and everything's hunky-dory. And I'm heading back home to get my family to bring them over, and it's getting on to Christmas, and I get as far as the Tiger Gorge, and it's coming on tonight, and I'm thinking, well, I could sleep out, but it's looking a bit dodgy, southerly coming through. And I thought, oh well, there's a farmhouse right there at the Tiger Gorge, and I'll go and knock on the door and ask if I can stay in the barn. And that's where I meet John Watterson Jr., a young Scotsman. Oh, you'll no be staying in the barn. You'll not be having that. You'll come right in here, you Sassenach, and experience some good Scots hospitality. Now come and sit yourself down there, and I'll get you a dram. There you go. My dad's out, he's bringing in the coos. Aye, my sisters are working with my ma in the kitchen. They'll be full along soon, don't you worry about that.
I'm going to just be helping here, putting up the decorations. Well, Christmas, I know. Yeah, we'll light the fire if you like. I mean, it's cold enough, isn't it? And it's more Christmas if we have a fire. Me? Oh, me and my sisters, we came out in March of 41. Yes, on the Lady Nugent. Yeah, me and my sisters and my brothers and my ma and dad and my grandma. And, well, because of all the trouble in the hut, we couldn't take up our land, could we? Until the disputes were settled. So we lived in Thorndon. I went to school there, at Mrs. Harvey's school. Aye. Well, finish that, we're up here now. We moved up here in 43, the same year that Jamie died. He's my older brother. Aye. Oh, we did have a lot of trouble during that time. Oh, aye. Oh, we had a couple of close shaves. Aye. One time we were warned by one of our friendly Maori friends. He fired his musket and warned us so we could slip out the back of the house and up into the bush and made our way to the stockade. Aye. Oh, it was a scary night, that one. But it wasn't as scary as another time, after Bullcott's farm, when they attacked Bullcott's farm. Rang your heart on his luck, you know. And, aye. Yeah, well, that was a terrible time, wasn't it? The bugler got his whole arm chopped off. Oh, nasty business. So we decided to take our stuff and go to the stockade. But we were on our way when we ran, me and my brothers and my dad, and we ran away, and we came across a party of hostiles. Ah, yes. We just dropped everything and ran. And my brother and I were running for the stockade, and we suddenly looked behind us. We couldn't see our dad. Oh no, they've got our dad. Oh, what do we do? Oh, we can't stop. We've got to keep going. So we got to the stockade, and we got the soldiers, and they came out, and they were looking, and they came to the hostiles, and there was a few shots exchanged, and the hostiles just melted away. And we went searching. We got to our stuff, and some of it was left. And we're calling out, and he just walked out of the bush, just like that. He couldn't run as fast as us, so he just hid in the bushes. Well, things settled down once Ringy Hayata sort of moved up to the Manawatu and was chased up there. And Governor Grey kidnapped Te Raupraha. Yeah, then everything just calmed down a bit, and then we could go back to our land and get things going again. But I think the toll was a bit much for my ma. Aye. Well, she died in 47, just the beginning of this year. Aye. But my dad's thinking of getting married again. I'm not that keen. Oh, it's not that I don't mind her getting married again. It's just who he's marrying. It's my school teacher, Mrs. Harvey. I didn't want to live with my school teacher as my ma.
Well, I'll tell you what, young Watterson. How old are you? What, 18? Oh, 19? Yeah, okay. Well, why don't you come? I'm just getting set up over in the Wairarapa, setting up an accommodation house there. Why don't you come over? Because I know a few of the locals up there, Wikingi and Manahira. I'll set you up with them and we'll have a conversation and get you set up with a bit of land up there. How about that? How does that sound? Yeah, well, he did. A couple of years later, he came over and we had a chat, and Manahira gave him a bit of land up by the Waihini. Young John Watterson, he took up being a ferryman across the river. He had a bit of land there, started clearing a bit of the land. He even tried his hand at my business. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Because before that, in 1850, we had a wedding. You see, my daughter Rosie and young John Watterson took a fancy to each other. So in April of 1850, we had an engagement party. And it was in full swing when there was a knock at the door. I went to the door and went, "Hello, Constable Burgess Sayer. What are you doing so far from your jurisdiction?" Ah, well, what do you can ask? You see, we've been chasing a murderer. The guy that killed Ellis, the seaman. Aye. Well, we finally caught up with him. 70 miles north of Castle Point. And we wouldn't have done it apart from Wewaka here. Oh, kia ora, Wewaka. And, but we just need to have a bit of accommodation. We'll sleep out in your barn. Oh, no, you come on inside now. Come on. No, come on. I mean, I haven't seen you for so long. I mean, how's Jemima? Oh, and how's little Richard? He must be, what, 8 now? Oh, goodness, how they grow, eh? Eh? And she's well? Right. Well, settle him in. Come in and join us. Well, he did. And then I didn't see anything more, and life went on, and more people came over the hill, and they started laying out these towns, grey town, and where I was, where my accommodation was, which had been called Burling up until that time, and now was going to be called Featherston. Oh, I wasn't too pleased. I was thinking of selling up, when there was a knock at the door, and I opened it, and there, whoa, Jemima, Mrs. Sayer. No, Henry, it's not Mrs. Sayer anymore. I'm Mrs. Ashmore now. You see, Richard was killed, arresting a man on Boxing Day in '54. And the last things he said to me was, I'll be back for Christmas pudding. He died in the hospital in Wellington and Thorndon. But now I'm married. This is John, my husband, John Ashmore, Henry Burling. We're going up to, John's got a contract to build a bridge across the Waiohine. Oh, the Waiohine, eh? Oh, you'll be putting my son-in-law out of business. Well, that's all right. I think he's getting sick of the job anyway. He's getting more to doing the farming business. So maybe you'll get on all right with him. And, by the way, Jemima, up that way is the land of Weewaka. Go and see him. Tell him that you were the wife of Richard Burgess Sayer. He'll be pleased to see you. They were great friends. Well, I took his advice and we moved up to the Waiohine, took up land there, and Weewaka was very generous to us. And when I told him that I was Richard Burgess Sayer's wife, he was very moved. And he was also very moved that I spoke to him in Te Reo Māori, and my husband looked at him and said, "Are you all right?" He said, "It's just that the white man doesn't take trouble to learn our language anymore." Well, things started to get a bit troublesome between the two races from about '59 onwards. The trouble started with wandering stock, and especially in our place, our situation, where John lost the contract for the bridge and finished it as a foreman for Mr. Carter. But we had some cattle, but they kept straying, and we tried to contain them, but they would stray into the Maoris' fields and their gardens, and they would get very upset, especially one, Ngā Tahere. And Ngā Tahere would come to our door to complain, and the third time he came, my husband said something very unwisely. He said he should take it to the justice, the magistrate. And Ngā Tahere was a very volatile sort of person, and flew into a rage and threatened to tear our house down, and as Ernest, he started to pull off the door. And after that, things got worse. He started cutting our cattle whenever they strayed and maiming them. And then in '63, when the British invaded the Waikato and there was war up there, a lot of the local Maori started becoming quite belligerent. And they'd wander around and walk into people's houses and just take anything they want and threaten the local Europeans, because there were so many more Europeans here by '63. But one of the things that happened with Weewaka is that shortly after we'd had that conversation, he came to us with a carving, and he placed it on our table. And he said, "In memory of your husband that was." I thanked him. But sometime later, our house was invaded by some of these young Maori men. Suddenly the door burst open, and there they were with their guns and their hatchets. things were hard on my husband at that time. In '64 he died. It was the same year that Henry Burling's wife died. But my son Richard got married. So, time of sadness and time of joy. And another 20 years went by before I saw Henry Burling again, because he had moved from our district. He'd sold his place in Featherston and moved down to Western Lake, and then after a while he got too old and he went to live with one of his sons east of Eketahuna in the back of beyond. And it wasn't until another wedding in 1884 that we finally saw each other again. Henry Burling, Jemima, Mrs. Ashmore. No, Henry, it's not Mrs. Ashmore. It's Mrs. Stinson now. Yeah, well, he was a widower and he had 6 children, and, well, children need a mother, don't they? Oh, come on, Henry. Come and sit down with me. Let's talk about the old times. Oh, you're looking very good. Oh, you flatterer. Oh, I'm getting old and worn out. Too many children, too many years, too much hard living. Oh, yes. But I remember back. Oh, look at this wedding. Isn't it amazing? Who would have thought it? My grandson and your granddaughter getting married. my first wedding, all my weddings. Oh, it seems so long ago. When I think back to that first one and how it was when we first came into the harbour in Wellington, what was that, 44 years ago? How much has changed? It was just trees and swamp and a few Maori villages. And now look at the land, crisscrossed with roads and railways, towns and farms, English animals, English birds. All the Europeans have done very well here, haven't they, Henry? Not so the Maori, unfortunately. I hear their numbers are dwindling. There's a lot of sickness. Yes, your friend Rangi Hayata died of measles back in '57, didn't he? They say they're a dying race. Do you think they're a dying race, Henry? Oh, Henry. What sort of world will our grandchildren inherit? Well, Jemima, your grandson's granddaughter, was my mother. And I too wonder what sort of world my grandchildren will inherit.
Any questions?